Right, we are live. Ben, you'll have to take it away while I send out the usual link and try and find it and all that jazz.
Happy days. I will take the driver's seat, and welcome to my 92-year-old's granddad's back room. It is. I mean, look at that. It looks like a pub in Malvern, doesn't it? It looks like I should be sat with you guys. And, you know, we're here, we're ready again. As we promised, we've got the man, Phil Richards, on. And before we get started, give us some love, give us some likes. Make sure you're sharing this out before we get into the mix. We're also going to open up mic for some questions. So it's going to be some real, raw, relevant information. And I've just raced it back. I can't remember the name of the dam, if anyone knows the name of the place that I've been today, but it was where the Lancaster Bombers used to practice the bouncing bomb. So I've just done it with me little girl and a little trailer behind me. Cairo on another mountain bike. I don't think Lisa's had a mountain bike since she was 16, so there was a few wobbles before she started. So I've raced it back to make sure we're here. And we're ready to take control of the day. So before we get started, what's been the win of the week, Si?
Oh, mate, God, loads. I was just thinking about mountain biking. I've always wanted to do a bit of mountain biking, but around here, it's not the easiest. It's an amazing sport. Everyone does it in Malvern. Have you noticed that? Everyone loves a bit of mountain biking, but mate, there's some hills. Like, you're not going to get one of them flat, nice canal mountain, them canal bike rides. You're going to get some fucking hills in. So, but back to my win of the week. Oh, mate, I've got so much going on in our groups, haven't we? I mean, you know that. We got the free 7 days. There's about 220 active people in our free 7-day challenge, and that is probably the win of the week for me at the minute. And if any of you watching are in that, let us know, because it's been a great group, real tight, interactive group. So yeah, that's probably the win of my week. What about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what's going on in your week, so for that to be at the top of the list, yeah, credit to you, man. And backed by popular demand, getting the myth, the man, the legend on, Mr. Phil Richards. I think that goes on top of my week, mate, because I know last week we got some crazy love for you, Phil. And to get you back on, mate, I know time is more valuable than money, so it's good to have you here, my man.
Yeah, it's good to be here, guys. Got some good stuff for you guys today.
Brilliant. So, Ben, should we dive in with some questions? Everyone's kind of rocking up and getting in. There's loads of people saying
hello.
Yeah,
before we start again, make sure you're liking, make sure you're commenting, make sure you're sharing. We're here to give some real, raw, relevant information out there for us good people. And like I said, I was thinking today, I was writing a post that, you could just say that one thing that can just reboot you, course correct you, or just get you out of this little rut that you're in right now, which we know is happening.
Yeah, definitely. Here's what we're going to. So, Phil, we might as well dive in. Here's what Phil you sent in the message, and I was like, "Oh, mate, I'm in." I was like, Phil's like, "What are we going to cover?" Phil was like, "Do you mind if I read out what you put? How to rescue your brain?" Because it was phenomenal. I read it and I was like, "What a man!" So, obviously, part one we had, and everyone absolutely loved it. So, everyone wanted you back for part two. So, we're going to let you do your thing. But here's what Phil sent us: is I can go over, and then it says this: How to rescue your brain. I'll talk about why our brains are being destroyed on so many fronts, from toxins, pesticides, EMF, hormonal imbalances, chronic nutrition deficiencies. That's not easy to say. All of these things will significantly affect your mood, personality, and decision-making. And then I'll go over how to rescue your brain through nourishment, sunshine, exercise, and smart thinking. That, for me, I was like, I am in. I am in. And I mean, Ben knows Phil better than me, but I know of you, Phil, right? And you are literally, like blowing smoke up your ass, world class at this, aren't you? Like, there's a lot of people who talk a lot of talk, but your experience, your training, the people you work with, like, you are literally world class at this stuff. So we always have a few questions for everyone. I got one question I always like to start with. Man, how did you get into all that? Like, all the stuff you do now? Because it's gone from training, obviously, to like way beyond.
Well, believe it or not, I was a junior Welsh cycling champion from about the age of 13 to 6. I was obsessed with fucking training, and then I would do all my own diets and everything when I was racing. I was doing 10 miles in like 22 minutes at the age of like 14 years of age on a bike where, you know, it weighed more than a fucking skip, because I come from poverty. I had no money. You know, I literally had a steel bag borrowed just to put a bike on the road. Anyway, and actually, and a few years later, I went for the British 12-hour record on the bike, believe it or not, when Ben was talking about cycling. I cycled around an athletics track for 12 hours from 9 o'clock in the night till 9 o'clock in the morning. And I had no skin left on my balls at the end of it, by the way.
I ain't got no skin left for 2 hours today.
Yeah, you know, I had nothing, you know, and yeah, I covered about 256 miles. I would have done more, but they had been pissing down with rain and there was huge, massive fucking puddles on the track. Anyway, but I joined the army at 16 and I soon became a regimental PT instructor, an infantry regiment. So I was just fucking obsessed with gym work, dieting. Then I went into running, you know, and I was running world-class times for 10Ks and 10 miles. And then I left the army. Well, I was asked to leave at around 2021 because you know, like I said last week, I had a personality disorder. I was genuinely a very unstable person. And then I owned the largest gym in Wales by the age of 22, 23. It was 44,000 square foot. It was fucking huge.
A big old gym.
Yeah, it was massive. It still is today the largest free weights gym in the UK. And, you know, but I never wanted a business. I had so many people asking me, you know, how to get in shape, blah, blah, blah. And then I sold my half of the gym and I invested in courses. I did a BSc in sports nutrition. I did clinical nutrition, medical nutrition, blah, blah, blah. And then I opened up a nutritional store then in South Wales and just was advising a plethora of people, but especially rugby, because obviously that's the heartland of fucking rugby. And then I was recruited then into, I was like one of the first professional strength coaches in world rugby. And I had enormous success. And the reason why I had success, and it's funny, I was training one of those guys yesterday who I hadn't seen for a long time, and they still talk about it today. My whole emphasis was always on health. I always got the player healthy. And then the training part was the easy part, you know, because you can only, you know, exercise, especially the way, as Ben will know, the way when you train in elite athletes, it has to be brutal. So that's all exercise is stress, but people can't cope with stress if they're already stressed. And you'll find a lot of people are stressed from the way they think, the way they eat, the way they live, and the amount of toxins that we are exposed to today. And that's why so many people today have such poor results from physical activity. They're already fucked before they get to the gym. You know, I know that I look at blood work, you know, that's my expertise, and I look at stool, and I can look at a blood. It's like the guy I was training yesterday. I hadn't trained him for 14 years. I used to train him at London Harlequins. He's going for a world record now in rowing. I'd already looked at his bloods last week, and he's one of the very few people that I could take in the gym and fucking destroy and know that he can respond from it, you know. And then I got another person, a young footballer that I'm training, who's got the testosterone levels of a pregnant goldfish. He's exactly the, I've got to really bring this guy to because like he can't respond, you know. You know, he's as weak as piss, not through any fault of his own. You know, you've played football. Football's one of the worst fucking sports in the world, even at the highest level, which I've worked at, you know, for nutrition, strength and conditioning, you know. So, but I was just obsessed, you know, every day. I've probably spent, and this is no exaggeration, well over £1 million on my education, you know, over the last 30 years.
£1 million on education. What made you transition into some of the stuff we're talking about today? Like, you know, that sort of, you know, because you're passionate about that. I've been following you on Facebook. Man, this bloke's passionate about like brain health and all the stuff you talked about. What made you, like, because you're going from, like you say, you're working from like elite athletes to that, where that's just the average Joe, right? All of us just cracking around.
Well, you know, what you got to understand is also when you look at the brain, for example, the brain actually is the primary organ which also determines your body fat composition. The reason why we also have an epidemic of obesity in the Western world today is that the brain is so fucking dysfunctional. You'll find out very shortly when I talk about things. You know, I wrote a book called The Science of Fat Loss, which was 730 pages, and there's a whole chapter in there devoted to brain health. You know, because the brain, as I said, it will determine your whole metabolic rate. There's a hormone that's actually released by fat cells called leptin, which is communicating with the brain constantly, which will determine how much fat you've got. But what we've come today, there are a number of things which inhibit this particular hormone now from signaling to the brain to say, look, you've had enough. As a species, we are not meant to be obese. We're very, very efficient at storing fat because we've lived most of our evolutionary life in time of feast and famine. So we had a plethora of hormonal feedback loops to signal to us when we were hungry and when we had enough. Because as I said, if we were fat hunter-gatherers, we couldn't have gone out and we couldn't have survived. We had to be lean, we had to be athletic, and I've studied the whole side of whether nutritional anthropology right away through to sort of evolution movement, and that's why I was so, and plus I'd struggled with depression all my life. I have to say, I used to wake up in the morning, my first thought was suicide. I'd go to bed at night, my first thought was suicide. It was just fucking there multiple times a day. And the record just kept repeating itself, and it keeps repeating and repeating. So I knew if it took me a long time, by the way, it really fucking did. It wasn't an overnight thing. It took me a long time to figure things out. But what I'll share with you very shortly is what is destroying the brain. And this is why we have such this massive epidemic of dysfunctional people today. You can go and see the best fucking therapists in the world. If you've got mercury in your brain, aluminium, you've got omega-3 deficiencies, vitamin D, hormonal deficiencies, men with low testosterone, for example, are far more likely to commit suicide than men with normal testosterone. Female with very low estrogen levels and low progesterone, which what I see every day, will struggle massively with anxiety levels. So the nature doesn't want you to be sick. Nature provided everything for us to be healthy. And it's the last, when you really understand the devastation of things like pesticides, mobile phones, chlorinated drinking water, there's a very drip, drip, drip effect that we have created in society, which is causing not just the brain, but every single cell in the body to become dysfunctional. That's why cancer, heart disease, obesity, diabetes is of a epidemic sort of rate,
Yeah, it's a bit like death by 1,000 paper cuts or stuff like that, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's that consistent flipping, boom, boom. I think that's like it was stress. For a lot of people, it's just that death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's like the little bit, and then eventually you're like, I'm fucking, it's a big thing.
Well, even the fetus, it's so dependent on the mum's environment. The mum, breast milk, for example, we know is 1,000 times better than formula milk. But the problem that we get into today is breast milk will very soon almost come with a government health warning because there's so many toxins in the mum's fat and in the mum's circulation, which ends up in the breast milk. We are creating a society, I can tell you now, which is so dysfunctional. It is of an astronomical sort of disaster for humanity, because what is also happening, not only if the mum's got chronic nutritional deficiencies, which is very, very common, heavily loaded with toxins, and then as soon as the baby's born, within the first 18 to 24 months, they're exposed to approximately 72 vaccinations. In those vaccinations, there is 4,625 micrograms of aluminium. And that aluminium, 100% of that aluminium will make its way into the baby's brain. And I'm not even scaremongering. I've got this this has been scientifically proven. I'm very fortunate where I've become really sort of friendly with the world leading expert in this field. And, I'll share some stuff with you shortly on that. So, and then the baby is brought up then on a diet which is so far removed from what humans are evolved to eat. So not only are we creating these toxic little creatures, then we nourish them with everything that nature didn't intend us to be nourished with. If I don't like somebody, I recommend breakfast cereals for those people, because it's going to fuck them up. It's just honest.
Do you think we know do you think we know as the average people kicking about, like, do you think sometimes we forget what we put in our system, like, does affect everything, doesn't it? Like, do you know what I mean?
Well,
what we put in, like, we sometimes think it doesn't affect anything, don't we? It's like, just, or we just think it affects body fat. I think that's what most people think. Food and that is just for people who want to look good or look better,
Well,
Whereas
steak,
it's not. It's way more than that, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? We don't understand the effect it has on our brain, our mood, our whatever,
Well, you've got to understand the vast majority, all your neurotransmitters have to come from amino acids. So the quality of your protein, for example, will determine the quality of neurotransmitters. Things like serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, major sort of messengers in the brain. And the hormones are also dependent on the quality of the protein and also the quality of your fats as well. The brain is the fattiest organ in the body, and it has a huge requirement for omega-3 fatty acids.
So while we're there on talking about the brain as well, just ask the audience right now, what do they think is the most important nutrient to the brain? We've not touched on it, but we spoke about a few things. What would you say the most important nutrient is to the brain? Si, we can't see the comments if anyone's commenting. What would you guess it is, Si?
There's loads of people commenting. I'll read them out. There's loads of people commenting. They're just saying, yeah, so far it sounds like me. What the sort of stuff you're talking about is hitting the nail on the head.
Well, what's interesting, we'll come back to the most important thing now, because a lot of people won't get it, and
gonna blow your mind.
A lot of people will be really shocked what is the most important substrate for the brain, and you'll realize how twisted the medical system is. I don't think it's done on purposely. I haven't got a lot of time for doctors, if I'm honest with you. There's very few decent ones out there, but you'll understand why I'm saying this shortly, because when you understand what the most important ingredient is for the brain, and there's over, I think I got a stat here, in 2016 in England, for example, there were over 64 million prescriptions for antidepressants. That was just in England alone, okay? It's up over 108% since 2006. So within a 10-year period, there's just a monumental leap. Let me tell you straight off the bat, first of all, there's nobody ever born with an antidepressant deficiency, okay? And the tragedy of antidepressants as well, when you really understand brain chemistry, the antidepressants are really, that's all they're trying to do is trying to increase serotonin in the brain. Well, first of all, there's over 180 neurotransmitters in the brain. The brain only communicates via neurotransmitters 2%. 98% of brain communication is done via the hormonal system. If you're that bloke or that lady and you're there, and you can easily say to a medical professional, I'm feeling down today. I can tell you now, 9.9 out of 10, you're coming out of there with an antidepressant. Yet they've not looked at your bloods. Yeah, they've not assessed your nutritional status. They've not assessed your hormonal status. And surprisingly as well, there is a massive correlation between your gut health and your brain health. I've got a master's in the microbiome. I look at stool testing. I can look at the gut, and I can give you a very good assessment on how you're feeling as well. But when I look at the hormones and I look at certain nutritional factors in the blood, I don't even need to see you. I fucking know exactly how you feel, and there's no getting away from it. I said, if just to give you a tiny bit of there's more thyroid receptors in the brain than anywhere else in the body, right? Thyroid plays such a massive part in how neurons communicate with each other. So our brain cells are talking, and we have a chronic hormonal problem with the thyroid today, because things like fluoride interferes with thyroid uptake, chlorine interferes with it, mercury interferes with it, and so does bromides, which are in baking goods. And that's just a start. I've written in that book I wrote, there's a whole chapter on the thyroid gland in there. So I become very investigative in why.
When it comes to the most important, what was it, Ben? The most important thing. Everyone's put water. Someone's put maybe carbs. Someone else has put vitamin D. Go on. What is it? Are we going to go there now, or are we going to save that?
Yeah, no, go there now, because it's so interesting.
It's cholesterol.
Yeah, and cholesterol is so important for the brain that in fact, I got a couple of slides on it. The brain simply can't, and that's why I was going on about the medical system, who are so fucking obsessed with cholesterol. There's also a whole chapter in my last book and in the Science of Fat Loss book on nutritional cardiology. I look at some of the most advanced blood markers in the world to assess cardiovascular health. I'll tell you what, I put cholesterol in that. It doesn't even come into play. It's so fucking irrelevant. I worry far more when I see low cholesterol in someone. If I see low cholesterol in someone, they are in a very bad way. They're moving towards cancer, or they're moving towards chronic depression. There is a lot going on there. So cholesterol, they did studies. I'm just trying to find some of these studies just to, in fact, this was it. In fact, it was in the brain, you have something, it was in the early 90s, 2000, there was research that were pointing towards a compound made by something known as glial cells, which are like scaffolders in the brain. They help to repair the brain. They keep the brain maintained. And all your thoughts and memories, learning and everything else that are involved with these glial cells, they actually enhance the way the brain lays down synapses, which allow the brain to have this better communication. Well, get ready, hold on to your socks, okay? What they found, because they didn't know what this substance was, and in the absence of this substance, these glial cells simply couldn't form new synapses. So you couldn't learn without forming new synapses. If you're trying to learn a new language or something like that, you just can't form it. And you'll find also that DHA, which I'll go into shortly, is very important on as well. But in the presence of glial cells, which secrete the unknown factor, neurons then formed in abundance. And then they discovered in 2001, they discovered it was cholesterol. And then they went on further then, just to hold on to your seats there, they then put these glial cells with small amounts of statin medication. And again, the glial cells stopped producing any of the substrates which have allowed the cells. So it's a known sort of fact, even, it's known that statin medication actually causes the brain to literally shrink. It's one of the most. I could give a whole seminar just to start. But
I've heard you do a whole seminar on that stuff.
To make this practical, right? How can I improve my cholesterol levels, my healthy cholesterol levels, to put it that way? How can I if none of it's like going to stop me learning and creating those connections which you're trying to do? Is that, what sort of things can I be doing?
Well, first of all, you can't even affect your blood cholesterol. That's the crazy thing about it. Cholesterol is so important for the body. Every single fucking cell in the body makes cholesterol. The liver is the primary hub for cholesterol, so you can't really influence it. What influences it is when cholesterol is getting lower and lower, cholesterol acts as an antitoxin and an anti-inflammatory. So the more toxins you have in your body and the more inflammation you have, the lower your cholesterol levels will be. Right. And then you'll find then, the optimum sort of diet won't have a massive effect on your cholesterol level, but certain essential fatty acids and lowering your toxic load and because these are the driving factors of all diseases. It's toxicity, it's nutrient deficiencies, and it's inflammation. Those are the three things that drive all diseases, whether it's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, dementia.
Yeah. So rather than being like, this is how you increase it, it's the shit that fucking blocks it, really. It's the shit that causes it to drop. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
Did you say, Phil, like even when we eat, I know there's some, we eat, it can't even affect our cholesterol. Like there's the myth of high fat causes cholesterol. I know, if I remember rightly, the thing around cholesterol finding our arteries is the lack of collagen and the build-up of collagen, because we can't build it. And then cholesterol acts as a band-aid, and that was getting the persecutor as the problem. But it's not the problem. It's actually the band-aid that's being instigated as a problem. And then statins is causing that to drop as well.
Well, what happens, like I think I said it last week or when we were on last time, cholesterol is such an amazing substance in the body. If it wasn't so important, I don't know if you know this, but the highest food source of cholesterol is breast milk. Okay, so Mother Nature is not going to want to kill the fucking offspring before we get going, yeah? And secondly, going back to the cardiovascular, sort of connection, it is so ridiculous to even, like I used the example before, today, I think approximately 465 people in the United Kingdom today will die of heart disease or a heart attack, okay? And you could have 33% of them with low cholesterol, 33% with high, and 33% with normal. There's zero correlation there. Now, when I look at blood work, I look at markers which are actually telling me how much inflammation are going on in the blood vessel walls, which will have a huge, and actually, I have to tell you this, because the heart and the brain is so connected, because the brain has got around 400 miles of blood vessels, and the human organism has got 60,000 miles. The better your circulation is, because when I look at blood work, not only can I see how healthy your blood vessels are, but I can also see how much oxygen is being carried into your brain, okay, which the brain is a huge oxygen hog. It needs glucose. That glucose can either come from carbohydrates, or the body can break down tissue. You're better off getting it from carbohydrates, quite frankly. And, so the cholesterol myth is so appalling, but they make $30-odd billion a year on statin. It's the biggest selling drug in the world. And
I think it out trumps like even cocaine and heroin.
Yeah.
That's so shit.
Yeah, it's so bad. So when you the tragedy of it all is, right, if you've got a magnesium deficiency, an omega-3 fat, let me give you this, in fact, if you've got an omega-3 fatty acid deficiency, this comes from 10 years from Harvard research, right, you are 92% more likely to die of a sudden heart attack than someone with optimum level. The UK are in the category where Harvard would class you as, and I test omega-3s, I test omega-6s, I test saturated fatty acid levels, and it's something else known as trans fats, okay, because the quality of the fat in your diet will absolutely determine the quality of your brain. And I have to say that an excess of saturated fats as well is an absolute killer for the brain. It really dumbs the brain down to a lot of hormonal influence, especially leptin that I mentioned earlier on.
So just so people understand there about like trans fats, just to categorize that real easy, you're looking at a lot of processed foods, right? In terms of like your chocolates and stuff like that, and foods high in omega-6, which is necessary to us, vegetable oils, stuff like this, the stuff that you're frying in. This is all high trans fats that is simply a choice of ours once you're educated that you can eradicate and swap. Now, the thing with omegas and getting a good DHA on that process is, ask your question, how much quality fish do you eat? Not farm fish, without getting into that. How much quality fish do you eat? And I really want to recommend, I don't want to just recommend it, but my kids and me and my wife and everybody in my family has been on a fish oil that Phil made called the Ultimate Fish Oil. And when they understood, I mean, I've been lectured and mentored and coached by Phil for over 10 years. And I've heard this, repeatedly. And, when he understood how important that was, I drink this like it's shots of Sambuca, no joke. And remember, like, we do things so instinctive that we want it for the now. We want that feeling now, and we want everything now. We want this change and this result to happen now. But remember, the things that we're doing now is for our future self.
Well, the Ultimate Fish Oil liquid was, I think it's the most advanced fish oil liquid in the world, even today. And I developed that product 9 years ago. And the reason why I can say that with such clarity without sounding a dick is because what I discovered was with fish oil, most fish oil is really toxic. And it makes sense because, fatty fish will oxidize very quickly. It'll smell very quickly. And what protects the oxidation is vitamin D. So when I was doing all my research, what I started doing when they were manufacturing my fish oil, which is actually done in the most advanced plant in Europe, and they add vitamin D in there in high quantities. And you're going to find out shortly, the combination of omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D is just one of the most important things that you can do, not just for brain health, but for every single cell in the body. But let me tell you this, the brain simply cannot operate without optimum amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. Our brain actually evolved 600 million years ago in the oceans. This is from some of the hardest core science. We have a huge need for omega-3 fatty acids. But what the science is showing quite clearly as well is when you combine omega-3s with vitamin D, there's a massive synergistic effect in the brain. Your brain will produce optimum levels of neurotransmitters. You will have a lot less inflammation in the brain. The brain is very prone to inflammation. And what I found just totally, when I was talking about cholesterol, which allow the synapses to form, to allow these messages to transport. So, the cholesterol, along with DHA, which is a derivative out of fish oil, it allows the neurotransmitters to pass from one neuron to another with much more clarity. You don't have the foggy thinking. You think much clearer. But let me tell you this, man, vitamin D, what vitamin D does for the brain, I have to say what vitamin D does for the body, it's just absolutely fucking insane. But for the brain, it is the most protective nutrient for protecting the myelin sheath, which coats the neurons from destruction. It is the most preventive thing you can do for multiple sclerosis prevention. And I've got some slides here on vitamin D. And when they bathe neurons in vitamin D, the myelin sheath becomes so nourished and so strong. Scotland has got the highest rates of multiple sclerosis in the world and one of the lowest rates of vitamin D in the world as well. There's a massive correlation. But we now know as well that vitamin D also transforms tryptophan, which is an amino acid, into serotonin. And the fish oil allows the serotonin and the other neurotransmitters to work much more efficiently. It really is. And that's why I put in that ultimate fish oil, I put vitamin D. I put other fat-soluble nutrient vitamins in there as well to stop the oil from going rancid.
Yeah.
So if I'm going off what you sent in that message, Phil, like the things that are destroying our brain, so to speak, that we've covered are things like the toxins, the pesticides, all that kind of stuff. So if we're talking about, because I know you've got loads to cover, if we're talking about how I can rescue it almost, it's like if I'm listening to this, and I know a load of people are going to listen to this and think, oh my God, I can't eat anything, I can't flip and breathe, I can't talk. And it's like, but there is stuff we can do, right? In there, like, yeah, that's what you're good at. There's stuff that we can be doing. Yeah. But I think everyone always needs to know, this is what me and Ben are trying to do every week. Sometimes, and someone said this to me, I've had this in the 7-day challenge, like, sorry, sometimes you're pretty abrupt and it's kind of a bit like, shit, I don't like to hear that. And it's like, well, the truth, what did you say before this live? The truth always, is it gets a reaction?
The truth always gets a reaction, yeah.
Yeah. The truth does always get a reaction. Sometimes
that's the thing,
we don't like the truth. We don't like the truth of it. Like sometimes I'm in the 7-day and I'm sort of saying this don't work, and people know it don't work. And it's like, oh shit, you're right. I have tried that and it don't work. And that don't work either, does it? It's like, no. But sometimes we just want people to hold our hands and say, you know what? Everything's going to be okay if you just try a bit harder and I struggle and you struggle. We can all struggle together and it's all okay. And it's like, no. Sometimes you need that direct, like, look, shit happens. Like, this is shit. This stuff is shit. Everyone's got a motivational story now, but that's not enough. It's like, no, this stuff you're doing that we don't know about is shit. But here's some stuff that's good. But you kind of need that realization that, fuck, yeah, that ain't good, is it? I think everyone needs that sometimes. Wouldn't you agree? Like, I think I had a dad who was very much like that. That's why I find it quite easy to listen to someone say, Si, that's not very good. I'm like, yeah, because he always told me the truth. Well, yeah, sometimes, and he wasn't a horrible person, but he's like, if you're crap, a spade's a spade.
Yeah.
He was never, like, I was just told. But I think we need to hear that, don't you? Do you know what I mean? We need to get that information out there sometimes. Would you agree?
Well, people don't want to know the truth about vaccinations, for example. People don't want to know the third biggest killer in Europe and the USA. And by the way, it's pharmaceutical medication prescribed.
Well, why are you saying that? This ain't us making it up. You can go and research this up.
Yeah, I've got all the references in my book. But people like me are always going to be silenced, and I couldn't give a fuck, to be honest, because I'm not a rebel. I used to be a rebel. I'm more interested now in
left that to me.
if you want to work with me, then I'll get you better. But
We
unfortunately,
spoke about this the other day, Phil. You know, you was mentioning it, and I was like, because you know, when I first heard this information 10 years ago, a chubby PT walked in thinking I was going to, you know, I mean, no lie, you know, talk about hard truths. We were given some information there that completely changed the way I looked at the life, a complete perspective shift. And talk about the truth and what you were saying before, Si, is that all of us here right now, me, you, and Si, we're here because we had to look at our own truths. And before we started to train and coach anybody and impact the world, it really started with our own cause. And I know you was like that, Phil. You was trying to figure your own stuff out. You was going down roads that just wasn't helping. The same with you, Si, the same with me. And we've discovered truths that really, you know, have not just impacted our lives, but we can talk about. And everything we're talking about, you know, is not just off the tip of our tongue. It's a lifestyle that we live by. But going back to what you were saying is, I remember you saying to me, and because I was trying to tell everybody, I was trying to convince everybody, I was having arguments, I was like, this is wrong, this is right. You know, like I got into that rebel state, and I said it to you the other day, and you was like, no, you've just got to keep shining a light. You know, we're here, and whatever people do with this information, it's up to them. As long as we're relevant and keep that information out there, and it doesn't just die with us, and people could take that next step with the truth, and it's not easy to know. But the lies, for me, is more damaging than knowing the truth and knowing something to do with it. And that's, you know, ultimately what we're trying to get.
Yeah, it always goes back to, for me, you know, fighting against what you don't like isn't the same as promoting what you do sometimes. I know there's an element of, but sometimes we can all get caught in the element of trying to fight what we don't like, even in our own lives, rather than building what we do and just building the bigger building, building the biggest building in town, you know, rather than trying to knock down everyone else's buildings. And I think that's the key, isn't it? That's what we're all trying to do. So, Phil, I know you've got loads, mate. I just want to jump in there to share it. Sometimes you hear stuff and people are like, oh, this is all a bit, you know, God, but no, it's the truth. And you know what? The truth, you can't build a great mind doing shit things.
Well, you'll find out. Now, this is why if you know how to detoxify the mind, not only emotionally, but you have to do it from a toxic perspective, because the brain is the fattiest organ in the body. And what that means is, well, toxins will always gravitate towards fat, okay? They'll always get stored there. This is why mercury fillings, for example, for those who've got mercury fillings, the information on that is just so devastating. It should be a crime against humanity. And I mean that with total sincerity, for any human being to put one of the most toxic substances known to mankind in somebody's mouth. And you've got to understand, when this is how mad the world is, that mercury will come to the dental office, right, in a big yellow container. Please do not touch, right? Yeah, it goes fucking 2 inches from your brain. When they take that mercury filling out, if they do, it goes in the same fucking yellow container. Please do not touch, but it's okay 2 inches from your brain. You know, in my generation, they put mercury in for fun. Now, mercury is so devastating to the brain, I don't even know where to start, you know, and this is from some of the most prestigious universities. When they expose brain neurons to mercury, which, by the way, for those people listening who have got them, I'm not even scaremongering because the research is there. It's constantly emitting the toxins, the gas is constantly coming off. And it causes incredible brain damage. It causes significant heart problems, and it also causes significant reproductive problems. And what's really interesting as well, it causes the red blood cells to become starved of oxygen. You know, the mercury actually sits on the hemoglobin molecules. You will become very likely to become so depressed when you got mercury in your mouth. And then when you add things then like fluoride from like non-stick frying pans, the non-stick will emit fluoride. And then in areas where there is tap water, we know that fluoride is a massive IQ inhibitor. Women with high fluoride levels, and when they become pregnant, their child will have a far lower IQ than women who are in non-fluoridated areas. But and as I said, it's this drip, drip, drip effect. But I don't want anyone to become overwhelmed, because the easiest way to go about it is stop putting the fucking shit into your body. You know, pesticides, like at the moment I'm working with a Parkinson's patient, and an Alzheimer's patient. You know, and I've done a lot of research in that area, and I can tell you why. I don't know if you know this, but dementia now is the largest killer in the United Kingdom. Dementia is an umbrella of brain degeneration, and they'll always bullshit you saying we live in older. No, we fucking not. You know, when you really understand the statistics, we're not living older, but you're meant to die naturally and not in a decrepit state for the last 35 years of your life where you can't even function, you know. And the brain, as I said, is so vulnerable. So you've got to stop putting the pesticides that hurt, you know, like in my house, for example, you know, I use a very advanced sort of reverse osmosis water filter. I always, 95% of the time, I'll always eat organic foods. Pesticides have a huge effect on the nervous system and the brain. I had all my mercury fillers removed about 12 years ago, which caused me, unfortunately, the dentist did such a bad job. I developed a major heart condition with it. And that's why I become so well read on mercury, and also root canals. For those people who got root canals, also very devastating, especially for the circulation system. You know, so, and then mobile phones. I can tell you now, all the data on mobile phones have been taken off Google. You won't find anything there, right?
Just wait there, Phil. Was it like a rise? I'm sure you've shown us that study or something on it where the rise in brain tumors around the side of the head that was never been in humanity ever, the increase in them, and that shit kind of disappeared, which makes sense, right? Which, yeah. You know.
It's gone up 1,000-fold. Brain cancer now is the highest cancer in children. When you look at photos of radiation with a child holding a phone to the head, it literally goes straight through the brain. The adult skull is a bit thicker, and it only goes sort of there. And over a 10-year period, if you've been using a mobile phone for a number of hours a week, the likelihood of something known as gliomas, which are real nasty fucking brain tumors, go up exponentially. You know, I've watched neurologists being interviewed, and they're silenced, by the way, eventually, you know, saying, if you ask me, do mobile phones cause brain cancer? I would say yes, but I can't say yes. You know, that's pretty much how they go about it. Will everybody get brain cancer on mobile phones? No. But is the brain being damaged? 100% yes. Even Spanish researchers have shown. The reason why I got into the brain so much as well, when I was training Amir Khan, I saw him get knocked out so fucking badly that I realized...
Was that Canelo?
No, it was actually, this was a long time ago. This was a guy called Prescott. This was
Breeding Prescott.
Yeah, you know, just it fucking Amir's brain into a different hemisphere. And, you know...
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah,
well, that was a mismatch, wasn't it?
Well, it was a lot. I could write a book on that 24 hours leading up to that fight, trust me. But you know, so I did a 6 month course then on brain scans. You know, I looked at everything. And when I realized how vulnerable the brain is as the same consistency as egg white. It isn't like I spent 10 years working with rugby players. A number of my friends, because I want you to understand this, you can have a severe hit on the head, right? Whether it was as a child falling off a bike, or you're in a car accident, or you're in a contact sport, it can have massive personality changes on your life. Yeah, it can totally destroy your life. And
who was the rower who was cycling through America? He fell and banged his head, and it was about his relationship after with his wife, and she was like, he just turned into a different person. I couldn't, because he was like in a coma or something. He cracked his skull. She said he was just never the same. Like, I watched the whole program on it. It was
the NFL's all over it, ain't it, at the minute, because that stuff's going on. I think there's a film about it with that lawyer who was saying.
Yeah, but I mean, I was saying that 12 years ago. If I give a lecture at a Super League team, and the coaches are just like, in the end, they were like, you know, because you don't want to know this shit. You know, if you're playing professional rugby as a career, you know, as I said, the most famous case was actually, I think how this started to come out was about 1870. There was a guy called Phineas Gage, very famous case in neurology. And he was a 23-year-old, and he was a foreman on the railways, and he was an exceptional worker, massive respect. Anyway, he was blowing up some stuff on the railways, you know, making new roads. Anyway, cut a long story short, and this is a very famous, people can Google that later, Phineas Gage, and you'll see that a spike went right up into his mouth and right through his prefrontal cortex. And there's a picture of him in a wheelbarrow being wheeled to the doctor with a fucking spike through his head. Well, his personality changed so he was dead within 8 years. He became a drunk. You know, he was sacked from his job, you know, within fucking weeks when he got back there, you know, and his life was just a total disaster. And I want to say that because I want you to know this as well, because I also study endocrinology. And when I look at the blood work, there's certain hormones coming out of the brain, because if you've had a head trauma, it can totally destroy the whole hormonal cascade coming out of the brain. So I can look at certain markers in the blood which will tell me how efficient your brain is from a hormonal problem. If you've had a car crash or whatever, you might end up having severe growth hormone deficiency. You can end up having not only severe personality problems, but severe obesity problems as well. You know, it's just startling. You know, so there's loads that is to be considered when you look at the brain. But cut a long story short, let me just tell you this as well. When you look at, when you assess somebody's bloods, for example, and say that person's really struggling with mental health issues, the first place you head straight towards is the omega-3 fatty acid index. I do a big index on that. You know, I had somebody, it needs to be around 8% for your brain, because I think I said this to you last time, in America, the largest suicides going on at the moment is with soldiers, yeah? And so they could predict that by 62%. And there's other research which shows that lots of prisoners, when they analyze prisoners' bloods, right, the vast majority have got chronic nutritional and omega-3 fatty acid deficiency. They are doing things they're not even conscious that they're doing. You know,
arguably.
Yeah, if they are low, and they've got low cholesterol levels as well, because I don't know if you know this, the correlation, let me just find something for you. The correlation behind not only omega-3s, but low cholesterol for suicide is absolutely massive. You know, and who would think that? Who would think that having low cholesterol is going to, you know, send you? I mean, if universities are in Minnesota, they found that people with total cholesterol levels lower than 160 milligrams per deciliter, these are American figures, which would be probably around 4.5 in the UK figures. And the doctor would be, you know, jumping up and down with joy with that. Listen to that. They were far more likely to commit suicide than those with higher cholesterol. You know, it was just, and they also went on and said then they were also much more likely to have bipolar disorders as well, because we now know how cholesterol works in the brain. And as I said, there's, you know, and there's this fucking whole obsession in lowering cholesterol.
Low cholesterol, yeah. Phil, there's a few, I know, because we haven't got long, we've got 10 minutes. There's a load of people saying, man, this is amazing, this information. But what can I do with, like, what can I do now? Like, if I'm hearing that and going, fuck, there's a lot of stuff that I shouldn't be doing, or, you know, that's going to affect me. What would you say if you had to put it in layman's terms? I know that's not easy.
No, I would like to answer that, because I put it in layman's terms all the time. And, you know, the number one is, fucking hell, man, you got to have a lot of love and harmony in your life. Baseline one, because just talk about toxicity, talk about all this stuff, mercury and all that. On a scale of the stuff that we're talking about, and I know this truth that we spoke about today is a little bit, it's a little bit heavy on the heart, but on a scale, how toxic is poor emotional health compared to what we're speaking about today?
Well, the emotions will, as I said, the brain determines your whole chemistry in the whole organism, you know, and I said this last time I was speaking, you know, when you think about, and I'll give you then some real practical tips on what to do as well, because I want you to understand this as well. The first meal of the day you eat will determine your brain chemistry for the rest of the day, okay? But going back to toxins, there's, you know, and that's what, when I was working with a very well-known psychologist many years ago, you know, that's when I told him, look, you know, you can't program a toxic brain, you know, and that's why I said you've got to clean the brain out. And I'll come back in a second. I'll tell you how to get aluminium out of your brain in a second, and mercury, because these are massively accumulated toxins in the brain. But I wanted to understand, first of all, stress, constant stress, whether the stress is coming from you overthinking, you know, because I've got a great study here with chronic stress literally just destroys the brain. But I did mention it briefly, but I got the exact figures here. In 2005, right, the National Science Foundation, they published an article regarding research about human thoughts. The average person has around between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day, okay? Now, of those, 80% are negative, and 95% of those are what you thought yesterday. Now, what is very interesting here, look, right? This blew me away, because this is the next bit I'm going to tell you links into this so perfectly. When you keep swimming in this sea of shit thinking, when your cells keep, on every cell, there's hundreds of thousands of receptors, okay? And the more negative you become, the more receptive they become to the stress hormones. And every time you divide, there's less spaces there then for the good hormones. You are literally, you know, you could be you're programming yourself when you're in that state. You could win the lottery then, you know, or something really happened to you, like, but you can't respond to it. There's no, those cells divided. They've become so dumbed down, you know, and you know, and that's the key to it, you know, because the cells, you know, this isn't even called this. Every single cell in your body is listening to every single thought you have, and they are responding appropriately. And that is the, you know, that's the absolute truth. And as I said last week, when you first thought, you know, when you're a kid, you know, because as we know, our brain, unfortunately, when you're a kid, you're living in the now. Yeah. I mean, I've just come back from holidays with my 8-year-old daughter. You know, is she worrying about fucking yesterday, tomorrow? No, she couldn't give a fuck. Like, she's in the moment, you know. But adults, we lose. One of the worst things you can do as an adult is to lose your child in you, the inner child. You have to keep that burning. And but we live in a society that would say, dummy, you know, grow up, you know, fucking, you know, wake up to reality. But the problem is, I said, you really are. It's so easy today to program yourself to become so fucking cynical, so negative, because we are bombarded every single minute of every day by the shit on the news, the shit on the radio, wherever you go. And you've got to shut that out, because let me tell you this, this is a great book, and I didn't mention this last week, but there was a doctor called Lisa Rankin, and she wrote a book called Mind Over Medicine, okay? And she was the most cynical medical doctor in the world. She thought pharmaceutical was totally the way to go. Anyway, cut a long story short, what she goes on to say, our bodies know how to kill cancer cells, it knows how to fix itself, blah, blah, blah. But here's the kicker. She goes on to say, it will only do that when you're not in a stressed situation. Yeah. And we are living in stress. You know, we have created a society, as you know. And what's interesting, the brain, this is just incredible, because the brain was geared like all other species. I don't know if you know of a book. There's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, written by probably the most smartest neurologist in the world, okay? If you look at every other species, I'll tell you what stress is to every other species, right? You're either going to get killed or you're going to fucking kill something. And then once that has happened, stress hormones within minutes come down to there. Yeah. We constantly think ourselves 24, we're worrying about this, we're worrying about that. But the problem is our brains weren't designed for that. You know, from an evolutionary perspective, we are wired exactly to what we were 40,000 years ago. If you grab somebody from 40,000 years ago and they were on here, they would look exactly the same as us. Their physiology would be exactly the same as us, but they wouldn't be worrying about their credit card bill or about COVID pandemic and all the rest of the bullshit that's going on. But we keep turning this, and the brain literally shrinks, especially a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is for our short-term memory. So, you know, just to, so people don't get lost. You know, so if you've got a toxic, stressed out brain, I don't give a fuck how much positive thinking you try to do. It'll always get around, okay?
I love the fact you're saying this in your way, because I think I said that exact sentence Monday night in our 7-day program. I was like, if you're stressed, if you're in like a survival based mode, like I don't give a shit what you throw in. It's like having the choppiest sea on the planet and you chucking a rock in there and hoping it's going to take effect. Like you're not going to see it. It's swallowed up. Nothing happens. The number one key to having a healthy mind is getting out of survival, isn't it? Surely, like get out of survival, get out of stress.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we try and fight the stress with this consistent, relentless positivity or questioning your thoughts all the time. It's like you can do what you fucking like. That's exhausting.
But let me tell you this: if you've got aluminium in your brain, you've got mercury in your brain, you've got fluoride in your brain, you've got lead in your brain, which is 100% of people listening to this. It interferes with the way that these messages are trying to be portrayed in the brain. And if we couple that, then I can tell you now, having looked at well over 1,000 bloods, I'd say 99% of people listening to this will have low vitamin D and low omega-3 fatty acids and definitely low hormone levels. And the reason I'm saying that is, that's what I'm saying, you've got to clean the goldfish bowl out, as I said last time, okay? If you want the brain to function efficiently so you can program it, you can't keep programming something that is so dysfunctional because, as I said, when you know what I know, what things like aluminium and lead and mercury and fluorides and chlorine, etc., does in the brain, coupled with the nutritional deficiencies, the problem that you have then is very poor brain chemistry. So you never really feel, you're trying to think, positive and have a good outlook. And I'm not knocking that. That's crucial. But the problem is you can't fucking trick a toxic brain, and that's why I'm so big on, getting, if people really want to get, take a grip of it, invest, there'll be some really affordable blood tests going up on my site actually within the next 48 to 72 hours for every budget. Find out, for example, I don't know if people know this, but 95% of in fact, I should say 100% of what's made in the brain is actually made in the gut as well. The gut is this huge, it's linked, to the brain and the gut are linked via a vagus nerve, okay? If you've got dysfunction in your gut, you'll have dysfunction in the brain. And if you've got dysfunction in the brain, you'll have dysfunction in the gut. There's over 100 trillion microbes living in our bowels. They release, providing they're healthy, they actually release chemicals into the bloodstream, which make us feel brilliant. But you never really see it today because there's so many things from antibiotics, everything that's destroying the brain is actually destroying the microbes as well.
So Phil, good question here. Where do these people start? So I would say if they're following us and they are not taking some form of breathing, journaling, all that other stuff, which is to create a better, stress levels, to move their awareness. I think everyone has to start with where's my awareness, calm myself down, but adding in the stuff you're talking about, because I always find people do that. I get that question all the time. What can I do about stress? It's like, are you doing doing stuff No. Most people are still looking for this thing in the future, and they miss what's in fucking front of their face, which is the stuff they can be doing. It's like, oh, I need this. But if you had to put this into like just a couple of steps, all this information you've given here, and you're like, here's what you should do or not do, but here's what you should do. Here's some steps. Like, here's what you need to be working on.
Well, what I would do first is, as I said, from a nutritional perspective, invest make sure every meal contains, depending on your age, but a minimum of around 40 grams of very high quality protein, okay?
Right, that's key. There you
go. Because that's where all the amino acids are coming from, to allow hormones and neurotransmitters to be made. And it will also as a real nice side effect, it'll get you lean as fuck as well, okay? It really is important. I mean, I've got one of the most amazing seminars on how to increase lean muscle tissue in the human organism. Secondly,
when is that seminar, Phil?
Mate, I'm going to put I'll have an 8-week course up on my site, probably by the end of September, which is titled Strength and Nutritional Strategies for Building Muscle and Losing Fat.
We're going to put that site. We'll put that link in the site for the rest of the guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone, that's really, it's real high-end stuff. I also run a 4-week health transformation plan as well, which is where I do Zoom. I send out a lot of very comprehensive questionnaires, but very easy to understand online, and also a 7-day food diary. Which I only got to look at that food diary, and again, I'll know what your mood is even on that. But going back to breakfast, for example.
Yeah, because you touched on something which I wrote down, which was the first meal of your day is going to have a massive influence on your brain chemistry. So what sort of things should you be looking for? Like,
well, for example, if you had a bowl of porridge, for example, you will increase all your sleep chemicals. It's a very lethargic thing, same as breakfast cereals, etc. So you want, it's a typical breakfast, like the breakfast I had this morning, for example, I had lamb's liver and I had organic broccoli and I had some rice. And the reason why I have that...
It was like breakfast like that.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is, and actually I should say I also had 4 poached eggs because I had to make sure there was at least 40, 50 grams of protein in there. And you'll realize, I said, I'll give you in another seminar on why that is, because it'll blow people's minds away. Because I have to tell you, the most important organ in the body after the brain is muscle. Muscle is so crucial. It didn't used to be thought of as an organ. It releases over 160 different types of hormones, and it's the hormone of longevity. And everyone really has got no idea. I'll tell you why as well. I always have cruciferous vegetables every day, and because I want to feed the microbiome. Yeah, because the microbiome is so crucial, as I said, for how you feel. But there's something in cruciferous vegetables called sulforaphane, which is a huge anti-cancer molecule. But what it does as well, hold on to your seats, I was fucking blown away. There's something that we produce which prevents, you'll have people who can gain so much muscle so quickly, and you'll have somebody who can do the same program and they still look like fucking Mr. Bean or Susan Boyle after the same program after a couple of months. Yeah, nothing happens. Well, first of all, there's a massive genetic component in our ability to increase lean muscle tissue. It's enormous. There's an enormous variation between people on a level I never even imagined how big it was. But what the sulforaphane does, we produce a molecule in muscles which stop us putting muscle on, and it's called myostatin. Myostatin is an evolutionary break, really, because we couldn't be these massive fucking mounds of muscle because we couldn't walk. If you look at Belgian Blues, which is a cow, which put on so much muscle, it's just incredible. And you get certain breeds of dogs, and Eddie Hall has got a mutation for this particular gene where Ed doesn't make a lot of myostatin, and that's what is another reason why Eddie's so big. Yeah, why he's so fucking, apart from he trains like a fucking animal as well. But you can train like an animal and still not get anywhere. That is a fucking scientific fact. But what sulforaphane does, it inhibits myostatin. So I'm feeding my microbiome. I do lots of other things which will
would it be safe to say for a top 5 it would be as much love and harm in your life as possible, right? Obviously, we're talking about stress, like as quality sleep as you can get.
Can I just going back to the love and harmony, right? There's one quote which really is one of my most favorite quotes. It's an African quote, okay? And in fact, a guy messaged me yesterday. I have no idea who this guy was. He said, "How do I stop fucking harming myself with my thoughts?" And I sent him back an African proverb: "When there is no enemy within, no enemy outside can do any harm." Okay. And I think that had such a profound effect on me personally, So the love and happiness, as I said, sometimes you can't determine that unless you are prepared to make big changes. I've had people come into my events who got divorced over the next fucking 6 months who just said, I realized I wasn't happy. Actually, one of my best mates' wife left him from fucking sitting in one of my seminars. So I mean, he was fucking devastated.
Sometimes, I don't know, mate. What I mean, you'll say is spot on, and I kind of did a little live on this morning because whenever I get some questions, I don't know if Ben, you're the same. It's a bit like, Si, what do you think of CBD oil? Or Si, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? Or what do you think? And I'm like, you know what? All of that shit, like, it may be beneficial to you, but none of it is going to outdo your shoddy fucking thinking habits, which you can improve. Like, we put all this emphasis on, oh my God, all these things. Like you're not going to. It's like when I was at the gym and the lad wants to get big.
Supplement bad habits.
What do you think of protein shakes? I think they're great, but they're not going to really, you lift some fucking weights. How about that? So,
well, it's going back to what Ben's trying to get to the point, I suppose, is the love and happiness, no enemy within, and you got to work on that. It's not a magical thing, No. It's only, I can tell you now, it's only recently that I've stopped thinking about suicide. I'm in the best place of my life, and I'm 53 years of age, so it wasn't an overnight fucking success. Trust me, But if I, you've got to work in it, and then from a nourishment perspective, as I said, you've got to really understand that every single spoonful that you put in your mouth determines your brain chemistry. It is determining how you feel now and long term. Okay, and that's why I said I'm such a huge believer in balancing all those meals, in just real sort of high quality food, because the food you eat as well will also determine your hormonal response. If I had this morning a big bowl of, say, porridge instead of the breakfast I had, also from an obesity perspective, by the way, I would have programmed my body all day to lay down and store fat. The breakfast I had this morning allowed my brain chemistry to become optimum, plus my hormonal response to become optimum as well. And then the third thing is undoubtedly from a supplementation perspective, and I've owned like CBD oil. I have no fucking interest in it. Okay, my company sells it. I had no interest. Even when I wrote my last book, I couldn't find anything that gave me any excitement to even mention it in my book. It's a bit like, if you want big fucking legs, you got to squat, right? If you want a functional brain, you've got to take lots of fish oil. You've got to nourish it. These are fundamentals. This is what nature, you can't get away with it. Like curcumin, for example, there's a big buzz about curcumin, okay? But your body can live without curcumin. You can't live without omega-3 fatty acids. They're essential. Okay, so these are
essential fatty acids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I have to say as well, vigorous exercise. There's something in the brain called brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is like miracle growth for the brain. If you want to get intelligent, really, advance your intelligence, really optimize the quality of your protein, the quality of your vegetation, the quality of real high quality carbs, not a lot of carbs. Some people cope with a lot of carbs, some people can't, but we still need some, because the reason why, if you go on a very low carb diet, your cortisol levels will become exceptionally high. But going back to vigorous physical activity, when you train really hard, you release this particular hormone from the brain, and this hormone is so powerful for what is known as neurogenesis, allowing it's only 10 years ago, they thought the brain couldn't grow any more neurons. They thought it was fixed, But do you know when the brain actually stops developing? Do you know what age?
You're dead.
No. It'll still, but it'll still develop new neurons. That's a good answer. But there's a part, our brain is sort of almost fully formed.
8.
At the age. What do you think, Ben?
I think I know this. Was it 21?
It's 25 to 26 years of age. And it's
close.
that part here, it's the prefrontal cortex, right? That's why, if you think about it, in car accidents, the biggest death rates in car accidents are men under the age of 25, okay? Because they really run in on their reptilian brain, which is an instinctive brain. Okay, it's only when, and this is what makes humans, this prefrontal cortex here has a massive reliance on omega-3 fatty acids. And if what separates us from other primates, it's what made us great. So that's so important. And then,
three things I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Three things I'm hearing you say, right? Number one, you've got to get a handle on the sort of the mental stress levels a little bit, love and happiness. Get a handle on your thinking, because of all the things we talk about, your thoughts are can be the most destructive thing on your body. The second thing I'm hearing is, from a practical point of view, everyone here probably needs to get a good dose of fucking protein at every meal. Like, as simple as that. And I guarantee most people don't eat much protein. I can guarantee, because, you know, we all know that. Most people don't say. Like, yeah, I have loads. You're like, really, mate? That's hardly anything. And the third thing I'm hearing is, if you're going to spend money on anything, get a decent fish oil supplement down your neck. Get a decent fish oil, like a decent one, not some shit from fucking Morrison's for $3.99, you know, that people buy sometimes. You're like, you know, like my mum would buy that. Oh, I've got cod liver oil. No, get some good fish oil in you. Like,
and with that, the dosage as well, which is important, because people take fish oil. When I ask them how much they take, and honestly, they might as well throw the capsule over their fucking shoulder, because it's having no physiological effect. Because you've got to understand, from an evolutionary perspective, we evolved on a 1-to-1 ratio with omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3s. Today, the omega-6s, right, are around 25 times higher than the omega-3s. When they're up there, you will have chronic disease manifesting within your body on everything, just chronic inflammation. And from a brain perspective, it just can't function, you know. So with the Ultimate Fish Oil Liquid, for example, 1 teaspoon with every meal. And I'll tell you what, within about 72 hours, you will start to feel a real emotional and physiological difference. And as another side effect of that, I have to say, you know, because obviously I study fat loss and muscle gain, it also prevents, it increases something in the body known as the mTOR pathway, which is the most important pathway for muscle growth. I have to say, when I wrote that last book, and I did say it last week, there were 3 things, if you remember, 3 nutrients that were like the 3 musketeers. If you get them in the optimum ranges, oh my God, you know, because, you know, if you want to perform in life, whatever your endeavor, as you know, you have to also not only be in good emotional health, but you need to be in physical health, you know. And that's why I'm a huge, as I said, you know, all my life, I've always been, you know, I've studied strength and conditioning at the highest level as well, you know, because they all marry into each other. But vitamin C, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D. In the Ultimate Fish Oil Liquid, you've got everything apart from vitamin C. And then
CoQ10, which is for another time, right?
Yeah.
So just repeating what Si's saying there. So the top 5
hang on, before I miss this comment, there's a comment, because a few people are a bit like, oh, so does that mean I can't do anything if I'm on medication? Does that mean I can't do anything if I've got fill-ins? And it's like, we're not saying that. You can always get working on yourself. Like, don't hear that, because that's what people hear. It's like, oh wow, you know, I had a trauma on my brain, so you know, that's me done. Oh, I've got some fill-ins. That's me done.
I've had plenty of trauma on my brain. You know, I've been in rings, I've been in car crashes.
Yeah, try not to play. Don't hear that.
Yeah, don't have self-pity is the worst fucking thing you can have. And
hear what you can do.
Yeah, in the Science of Fat
great point, sorry.
In the Science of Fat Loss book, if people want to go to buy that, because it's only $9.99 at the moment, there's a whole chapter there on detoxification for those who've got mercury fillings in there. There's a whole chapter on brain health. There's a whole chapter on fucking thyroid health, steroid hormone health. You know, Ben will tell you, I mean, it's just, you know, it's one of the best. It's really the science of health. You know, as I said last week, I called it.
Would buy it. No one would buy it if it was that.
You know, it is. You know, if somebody wants to take charge, as the saying goes, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man how to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly. And you know, just to wrap this up, from the stuff I heard 10 years ago to where I'm at now, bit by bit, little by little, you know, gradually getting there. You know, I was, you know, 13 years ago, I'm overweight, I'm stressed, I'm acidic, I'm a violent individual, I'm sat in strange ways, I'm nutrient deficient, all the things that you're saying. And it took me 12, 13 years to get where I am now. And it's a never-ending journey. And this information is for you to take away, be aware of. Let that type of emotion create some type of change. But what Phil's saying, what Si's referencing there, is that if you've got a lot of love and harm in your life and you're practicing that, if you're eating a high standard of quality food, you know, if you're moving the body and staying hydrated, getting well rested, And unfortunately for us now we have to supplement. If you've got that awesome sixen, you know, your body is in a great state, and then, you know, you can, you know, have the energy and the time, and not only start to create a better life, but know that you're in a state of better health. And if you master those, if you take anything away, if you start doing that, starting with your morning routine, a 7-day trial, whatever's going on right now, you know, get Phil's book, being around this mix, you just coming here and being aware of this information, giving you time and energy is already a step forward. So don't come away from here feeling scared or that's it, I'm done. No, be aware, like, you know, Sai said, you know, what are you going to do right now? What's the next step that you're going to take?
I know for me personally, like, everyone knows I'm massively into the mind and training it in that sense. And, you know, physically, not so much, but enough. For me, I'm looking at me going, you know what, I ain't getting enough. I know I'm not getting enough protein right now. I fucking know I'm not getting enough protein. Like, you know, I just know. I know what 40 grams roughly looks like. I know I'm not getting that at good quality meals. I know I'm not getting enough fish oil in me. Like, I know that. You know, these are things I'm already going, yeah, I know that. Like I know from what you're saying now, it's like, yeah, I need to go do that. Like, that's
yeah,
me.
give that fish oil your kids as well, man. Babies, everything. Breath, put it in the milk. Like, that's, if there's anything you're gonna go spend your hard-earned cash on now, I'm telling you now, go and get yourself that stuff. And just remind what Phil was saying. The most shit that you see on the shelf, the supplement industry is not regulated. There's shit everywhere. I'll say that with truth. And a lot of this stuff that's out there is just nonsense. So referencing what he does, you know, I can't tell you how quality that stuff is. That it's just years of research, isn't it, Phil? It's not like you just brought it off the shelf. You're nothing to do with that company no more. You have done this from your own research in curing and rejuvenating yourself, right?
Well, that's it. You know, you'll never try to find the solution if you haven't got a problem yourself. You know,
exactly.
And I think I was given plenty of problems. You know, so you know, and you know, and it's good to who's going to listen to somebody who hasn't been through the fucking trenches, who haven't done, you know, not only haven't lived it, but also not only haven't got the academic credentials, but the real life credentials as well. Because you know, you've got to have both. Because you know, if I was talking to you on what most people are with a level of knowledge which you could really put on the back of a postage stamp, it would be meaningless. You know, you've got to be able to convey a message that people will hopefully understand, because as corny as it sounds, people never value health until they lose it. Yeah, it is more
powerful.
Time and health are the two most valuable components any human being can have. We fucking worry about yesterday. We worry about tomorrow. We never in the now. Then we don't really, and in fairness, society has programmed us to be like that. The media has been so horrendous over many decades, funded by Big Pharma, which has brainwashed the public to think you can have a pill for every ill or a vaccine for every virus. And I can tell you, you know, when you know the reality.
And we wonder why we call TV programs.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So Phil, I'm gonna see you. We'll probably have to finish this up, but we'll see you Saturday in the academy. For you guys in our academy, Phil's coming to deliver some great stuff for us in there. So I'm hoping you might talk a little bit about that detoxification element of the brain. I think that would be really good for our guys. But
if you want to, I mean, I can focus on detoxification of the whole organism, because you know, as you know, the brain isn't separate to the body. It's, you know, once you know, I was fortunate to have done one of the most advanced detox courses in the world. And as I said last time, we detox through the skin, you know, so we perspirate, we respirate, we urinate, we defecate. And the liver is like the general of that, you know. So again, when I look at blood work and all that, there's certain markers in the liver and the stool, which will also tell me how efficiently somebody is excreting toxins, because that is the primary cause of all cancers. It's toxicity levels. 1 in 2 people listening to this will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And it is totally driven by nutritional deficiencies and toxicity. You know, so it's such an amazing, you know, sort of subject.
Well, there you go, guys. We promise you some certified wisdom. We have not.
Yeah.
we've gone full throttle. And
it's been a blast. Ben, I've got to shoot out of here, but folks, thanks for tuning in. As always, if you got something from it, hit a like button, hit a share button. You know, just share it around. It always helps us help more people. Anyone in the 7 days, I'll catch you Friday. Anyone in the academy, I'll catch you later. Until then, have a wonderful evening. Well, afternoon, day, fucking whatever. Go steady.
Yeah,